Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is Maria Imbalzano. Maria is a retired matrimonial lawyer who now writes full time. Instead of drafting motions, legal memoranda, and briefs, although fascinating, she now spends her days creating memorable characters and taking them on their emotional journeys through her contemporary romance novels. Her novel, Unchained Memories, won the Wisconsin Romance Writers Right Touch Readers Award and the ACRA Reader's Choice Heart of Excellence Award. Sworn to Forget, the first of the four-book Sworn Sisters series, was a finalist for the illustrious Rone, RONE, Award as well as the Book Buyer's Best Award. Two of her novellas won first place awards in the National Excellence in Storytelling Contest. The Blueberry Swirl Waltz won in the short historical category, and A Song for Another Day won in the short contemporary category. Both of these novellas were also finalists for the Beverly Award. Welcome, Maria. Please tell us a little more about yourself and about your new novel, Red Velvet, Crinkles, and Christmas Sprinkles.
Well, thank you, Janette. And that's a very open-ended question. A little bit about myself. Okay. So I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and I live about 15 minutes away. So I have not really expanded my worldview here. I live in Lawrenceville, New Jersey now, which my mom still lives in the house that I grew up in, and I visit often. My father was a barber in Trenton and wanted me to become a barber. And I resisted and went to law school instead. So it was a funny conversation with him, but a great guy nonetheless. So my journey as a writer came to me late in life. Not that late, but I hated writing, creative writing in high school, in college. I didn't think that I was very creative. I didn't know what to write. I didn't know how to start. And it wasn't until I was in law school that I started to love writing, but that's a very different type of writing. So legal writing is very analytical, very linear. And I got that. That's obviously the way my brain works. So I wrote a lot of briefs, a lot of memos. I wrote an article for a law review when I was at Fordham Law School, and just really enjoyed that. But it wasn't until 1998 that I decided that I wanted to try to write a book. So I had been working at my law firm for years. I had 2 children, small children at the time. And I read every night. So, you work all day, you get home, I need to wind down after the kids go to bed. And I was reading a Danielle Steele novel, and she was kind of annoying me. So she was saying, the same thing on page 100 that she had just said on page 98. I'm like, I bet you I could do this, which you hear from so many people right before they do what they really want to do. So I was talking to my husband about it, and he said, okay, so just try it. And I'm like, well, should I go back to school? He's like, oh, no. We're not doing that going back to school thing. If you want to do it, just sit down and write the damn book. Oops, I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, across my desk at work around that time came a flyer for continuing legal education credits. And it was how to write a novel in 14 days, a lawyer's perspective. It's like, oh, I'm signing up for that. So I went to that seminar, and it really put me on track to start writing, because it was really how to plot your novel in a very analytical way. So it was perfect for lawyers and for me. So I took that, and with every new book that I write, I use that same method and plot my books to the nth degree before I start writing. So it's chapter by chapter, scene by scene. It's all kind of plotted out. so that it's very easy once you have that done to sit down and write the book. So, so I sat down and wrote a 400-page book, but I had never taken any writing courses. So I had a friend in New York, because I had worked as a paralegal in New York before I went to law school. And he worked for a publishing company. And he said, well, send me your manuscript and I'll send it off to one of the editors. And so I did. And she was nice enough to write this like 5-page rejection letter, which usually you get one line, no, this isn't right for us. And that was at the time when you mailed things in. So she wrote this very, very intense critique, which was wonderful. And then I realized that there was so much I had to learn. So I joined New Jersey Romance Writers, which is still a wonderful, inspiring group, and started learning things by going to the meetings, going to their conferences, belonging to Romance Writers of America, going to their conferences. And then I started seeing all the things that I didn't have a clue about, which was inspiring and wonderful and challenging. And it took me a long time to get published because I was really learning from scratch. I also had to learn how to word process. I had a secretary who did all my work. I knew how to type, but I didn't know how to word process. So I had to take a little class on that. So it was all this wonderful learning curve. And finally, I guess after the first 5 years of writing another book and then another book, I had sent my third book into New Jersey Romance Writers contest for unpublished writers called Put Your Heart in a Book. And I won. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on the way. I got an agent. It was so exciting. I thought, this is it. Now, this was in 2003. I was not on my way. I got nowhere. The agent was not that helpful to me because I wasn't, on her mind all the time. She had many other people who had been published already. After a while, I just fired her and started from scratch looking for another agent. Then I finally found the Wild Rose Press, which is where I'm published. And I didn't sign a contract with them until 2013, which was 15 years after I started writing. But that whole time was an amazing learning experience for me. So that's kind of my journey.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And wow, 15 years. Congratulations on winning, the Put Your Heart in a Book years ago. But that's, I guess that feeling that's the opening to so much more. And yet you found that you had to continue to grow as a writer before you found the Wild Rose Press and before you found you were eventually published. But since you've been published, how many books have you written? How many have you published?
So I have 8 books published. 5 are full-length novels and 3 are novellas. And I have a new contract that I just signed with the Wild Rose Press for a novella in one of their other series. So so it will be 9 soon.
And did you that original 400-page manuscript, did you ever publish that, or is
No. That is sitting in a drawer. Okay. And I'll probably never get back to that book. I wrote another book after that. And then the third book that I wrote is the one that won the contest through New Jersey Romance Writers, but that never really got anywhere. And because it was a book that I just couldn't let go, finally, I sort of reworked the whole thing and turned it into the Sworn Sisters series, which is now published. Okay. But it's a little bit different from what it started out being. So it's about 4 girlfriends who were high school girlfriends, they're still friends in their early 30s, and each of the four has their own book, their own story, but they're in each other's books. And the first three books are published: Sworn to Forget, Sworn to Remember, and Sworn to Fly. And the fourth one I'm working on right now. So,
Hey, wonderful. It's hard to, I imagine, to like let go of some characters, especially characters that, you took so much time to write and got you the award. Um, so was it hard to go back and edit? 'Cause you said that you're a plotter, not a pantster. So
I'm a
um,
plotter.
so was it hard to like take that original manuscript and like take it apart, replot the four parts?
So it wasn't, I don't think it was that difficult, because actually, so the book that I had ended up being book 2 of the series, which is kind of weird. You would have thought that would have been book 1, but I ended up writing all 4 drafts. This is how crazy I am. Okay. Before I let the first one go, I decided that I better write a draft of all 4 books in case I change something in the 4th book that would affect the first, second, or third, like where one of them lives or their job or something that would affect it. So I had written all 4 books, and then I decided that the second book should be the first book, just because of where it sort of stood in the stories. And so because they each have their own stories, I was able to take pieces of that book that I had written so long ago and move them into the right book, and then create a whole story around those books. So that's what I did. One of the things that I learned, and I will never do again, is the first and the second book are during the same time period, so they overlap. And that was stupid, because then I had to keep going back and making sure that they were doing the same things, or the same people were there at the same time. I will never do that again.
And you would think that that would be something that would make it easier,
Yeah, no,
because
it didn't. It did not.
because that allows you to, like, okay, so take this scene from this person's perspective instead of from this other person.
Right.
But no, but the details, I guess the details and keeping the continuity must be really hard.
It was just, yeah, it was a constant going back and forth. And then once my editor got it, she's like, well, if they're having a conversation, it has to be the exact same conversation. And, they weren't like these big, long, in-depth conversations, but wherever they were in the first book, if they were there in the second book, they had to have the same conversation without changing words. So I had to keep going back and forth, and it was just not a good thing to do. So the third book takes place after that as the 4th book. So they're now sequential. So
As a reader, like, we think, okay, it must be easy, because I mean, I've read authors who've done like 1,000-page books like that. Now I have to think, wow, how did they manage? Like that
yeah.
must be really difficult. So I know that in Red Velvet Crinkles and Christmas Sprinkles, Bella is a lawyer. Do lawyers come up a lot in your books? Are there a lot of lawyer characters?
I do tend to write lawyers, because they say write what you know, and boy, do I know lawyers. My husband's a lawyer. I was at a firm with 100 lawyers. My friends are lawyers. And the nice thing is that I don't, only one is a divorce lawyer in all of my books. But it was easy. The first book that I wrote that got published, Unchained Memories, has a big medical malpractice case in it. And it was good because I had people that I could go to in my firm and ask questions of. I also had to talk to one of my doctor friends, because there was, big medical issues in the book. So it's nice when you could just walk down the hall and ask questions, or I could do my own research because I understand law. It's easy for me to read a case and get it, or to read a statute and get it. So I do have quite a few books with lawyers, but not all of them. So in my Sworn Sisters series, just one of the four women is a lawyer, one is a music executive, one is an ER nurse, and one is a stay-at-home mom in the beginning of the book, but she had a huge career in New York City as a banker, and she gets back into banking. So, but those books are based on my girlfriends and myself. So that was kind of easy to picture those characters.
And you mentioned you wrote series and novellas. Have you written standalone? And which do you prefer, series or
So
standalone?
all the ones in this series are standalone. So even though they're part of the Sworn Sisters series, you don't have to read them all. You don't have to read them in order. I've made them so they're standalone books. The first two books that I published are totally standalone: Unchained Memories, Dancing in the Sand. And then the novellas, although they're parts of series that the Wild Rose Press puts out. So my Christmas cookie book, Red Velvet Sprinkles and Christmas Sprinkles, or the other way around, is part of the Christmas cookie series, but they're all standalone books and they're all by different authors. I wrote a book for the ice cream series called The Blueberry Swirl Waltz. Totally standalone. It has nothing to do with any other book in the series. It's just that it has an ice cream theme. The book that I just signed the contract for, which is the Wilder West series, most of the books take place in Wilder, Wyoming in the late 1800s, but I'm a contemporary writer. So I wrote the book to take place in the same town as a contemporary story. So they're all standalone. You don't have to read any of the other ones unless you really like the series, and then it would be all different authors.
Okay. And is there anything about Red Velvet Crinkles and Christmas Sprinkles about the book that you want to share?
So one of the things that I really enjoyed with that book is that I think it's kind of funny, and I don't write funny. I'm a very serious person. All my books are pretty emotional and heart-wrenching. But this book, Bella is a lawyer and she comes back home because she lost her job in New York City and she lost her apartment because she has no money anymore. And she moves back with her parents in Princeton, and they own a little gift shop in Princeton. And it's not doing well. So she's going to help them out and figure this out. And she tries to convince them to turn it into a cookie cottage. She's very much like me, and she's not very good in the kitchen at baking, at cooking, at anything. And so she's trying to help her mother, and her mother's always giving her a hard time about how she measures things. And my daughter does the same thing with me. She's like, that you're using a wet measuring cup for dry ingredients. And I'm like, what difference does that make? And apparently there's a big difference. So I'm pretty casual with my baking and measuring and that kind of thing. So I made this book really kind of funny like that, where Bella makes all these mistakes and her mother's always correcting her. And then they do what her mother calls a tic-tac video, but it's for TikTok, because they're trying to market this new cookie store. And so they do videos with Bella making baking mistakes and her mother calling her out on it. But it's a lot of fun. It's lighthearted, and some of it's even funny from me.
Is there a cookie recipe?
I should have put it in the back and I didn't. So the cookies are Red Velvet Crinkles, which I had never heard of before, but I was looking for a name, a title for my book, and I needed to come up with a concept before I started writing the book. So red velvet is always, I love red velvet, red velvet cupcakes or whatever. And I saw that there were these cookies. So I made them about a month ago, and they are delicious. They're real cakey kind of cookies, but I love chocolate and I love red velvet. So they're pretty easy to make. But of course, with me, I pulled the recipe from, online. I just pulled one off of the internet. And I bought all the ingredients and I'm ready to bake them. And it's like, you need parchment paper. It's like, who has parchment paper? Well, maybe everybody has parchment paper, but I don't. So I did it without the parchment paper, but I've bought some since and made those as part of my Christmas cookie repertoire. So, but it's not in the book. You'll have to just go online and pick one.
And Google. Okay. Okay. And Vast, you've told us about how you were inspired to start writing and about the books you've written. What for you is the most difficult part of writing?
Oh, let's see. I really like every stage, which is pretty weird. I like editing, which a lot of people hate. I don't know whether it's because, my whole legal career, I edited to death everything that went out of my office. And even if it was my work, if it was somebody else's work, oh, like they knew not to bring it into me if they really didn't want me to fix it. So, so I love the creating part. I love creating a new book and coming up with new characters and plotting the whole book. I certainly love sitting down and writing the book. And then I enjoy editing. I think probably the part that I don't like the most is reading the story 20 times. It's, you have, I probably read it 8 times before I even send it to my publisher. And then, you have to read it again to write the blurb. And then you're reading it again as you're going through edits. And then you read it again for the galleys. Like, it's just constantly reading the same story. And what happens with that is when you're reading it for the 15th time or whatever, it's like, oh my God, this book is so boring. No one is going to like it. Because I just know it so well. It's not exciting anymore. There's nothing new. So that's probably the piece of it that I don't enjoy that much. I really don't like marketing it that much either, but that's not part of the writing process. That's just, what you have to do to get your name out there.
Oh, it is part. I mean, these days it's a huge part of
Right.
the writing process. And you've described your publishing journey. How much input with the Wild Rose Press do you have on title and cover? Is it something that you're allowed to provide some input, or do they kind of do it for you?
Yes, no, they're wonderful. I can't say enough nice things about the Wild Rose Press. So there's a form to fill out about how you see your cover. I mean, first of all, they ask you what your characters look like and what do you see your cover looking like? Do you want 2 people? You kind of describe it. Do you want them embracing, not embracing? Do you want one person? So like my first 2 books just had a woman on the cover. I've changed Unchained Memories covers since then. So I didn't really like that cover. But the other books, so what I started doing, so the first book, Unchained Memories, when they sent me my cover, I really hated it. And I crafted an email trying to put the positives up front first before like sort of laying into like, this doesn't look anything like my heroine and she's a Northeastern New York woman not from the Midwest, which is kind of what she almost looked like she was on a farm. So anyway, they did change the cover for me. But since then, I learned to go through stock photos ahead of time, and and I'll take hours going through stock photos and letting them know which stock photos I think represents what the cover should look like. Now they don't take those stock photos, but now they have a real idea of what I would like my cover to look like. And every cover since then, I have absolutely loved. So I do have a lot of input into it, and I love doing that part of it too, because it's kind of fun once I know my characters to come up with, what they should look like and what they should be doing and what the background is. So it's all been great. And the title, they pretty much keep unless it's something that's a title that's out there already, or that just wouldn't work for them. But they pretty much keep the titles that I've provided.
That's great. That's great. That's makes you feel like, oh, I'm attached. Some people get very attached to titles, um, and definitely as a reader, as a librarian, covers matter. Covers matter, and if you're reading the book and the protagonists don't look at all like what's on the cover, it really kind of throws you off. So,
Right. Yeah, I mean, as I said, like with Unchained Memories, which I have the old cover here. I don't know if you can see it.
oh,
There we go. So it takes place in Princeton, and this building is a Princeton building, but they had a different building, and I wanted that building. So they changed that. But they had a totally different woman on the cover. I mean, even now she has like some white blouse on, but she's like a medical malpractice lawyer. Like, I don't know what, like why they dressed her like that, but they did change her from what it was originally. And so it was much better. but you live and learn.
Oh, sorry. We have one of the books, and I think it's Unchained. I think it's the one you just said, and it has a woman and a man on it.
Yeah, I had the cover changed after several years because I just couldn't stand this cover anymore.
Okay. It's a great cover. It's a really nice cover. I was going to ask, have you considered like indie publishing, not going through a publisher?
I have, but it's what I like about going through the Wild Rose Press is there's a whole group of authors that are in a loop, and we help each other. So it's hard enough to market like on your own, just to publish to your Facebook friends or your Twitter friends or whatever. But this group there's over 1,000 authors, and they're all over the world. I just did a Facebook party with someone from Australia. And so she's got her whole list of friends who were probably on the Facebook party, as well as people from here that she might be finding new friends with or new readers. So I just find the whole Wild Rose Press family very wonderful to work with and very supportive. And if I was on my own, I wouldn't have that worldwide reach of other people, reposting my tweets or my Facebook post, or coming to even see if I'm doing a blog or, being interviewed. So it's a nice group to have behind you. New Jersey Romance Writers is similar. It's nice to have this wonderful supportive group that will help you. And if you have a question, you just put it out there and you'll get tons of answers. So I think it's a lot better than being in my own little world and trying to publish as an independent author.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we've had a mix of published authors and some self-published authors, and it's good to always get both sides and the pros and cons. So thank you for that. And you did mention the New Jersey romance writers. How important is it, or was it, for you to join a romance group? A writers group. And do you have critique partners?
So it was very important for me to join New Jersey Romance Writers because, as I said, I didn't know the first thing about things like point of view, character arc, black holes, or not black holes, the black moment. I started learning my craft through New Jersey Romance Writers by going to their monthly meetings, which always had a speaker, by going to their conferences, which were 2-day conferences with amazing speakers and seminars. And in joining New Jersey Romance Writers, you also had to be a member of Romance Writers of America. They always had every year a huge conference, which was also very helpful. So learning through that was helpful to me. And just, again, having other writers in your group that you could ask questions of was very helpful. So I just think that was like a number one thing for me to have done to get going in this career. And yes, I do have a critique group. It's sort of morphed over the years because people move and go or stop writing. So, it's changed, but my first critique groups were always members of New Jersey Romance Writers. Now, I don't think they belong anymore, but one of them is still the same one that I've always had, and one I met through the Wild Rose Press. So it's been good.
Very nice. And what advice would you give to a writer who's just starting out? One piece of advice?
I think just to keep learning. I mean, I'm still learning and I have 8 books out. I think you can never stop learning your craft, and to be persistent, because I could have given up at any time in the first 15 years that it took to get published. But if you give up, you're never going to be published. So persistence and learning your craft are just huge. So don't give up.
No, I always have a fun question at the end. I also ask anyone in the audience, if you want to write any questions, so please type it in the chat, and I will read them to Maria. But I'm going to ask you my question because I went onto your website and I saw your blog post, and I saw that you were trying to record your audio, like audio versions of your books, and I went, wow, because I admit I listen to about 90% of the books that I read. I listen because I have a long commute, and I do it while I do stuff around the house. So I'm an avid audiobook listener. How was that experience trying to create it? I have a few more questions after that.
So I still haven't finished any of my books. I was recording sort of as trying it, try a chapter, try 2 chapters. I learned how to edit it. So I know how to do it. What I can't master, and I really have to work on, is changing my voice for different characters without, you don't want to sound like a man, but it's got to be a different tone to your voice so that the listener knows that it's somebody else, talking. I was trying to record one of my novellas. I think I started with the Blueberry Swirl Waltz because it's a shorter book. I thought, maybe I'll do that one. The problem that I was having is there are 2 little sisters in the book, and how to distinguish them from each other. And I just, at some point, I'm like, this is too hard. I'm not getting this voice thing down. So I do intend to get back to it. I liked doing it, and it was something a little bit different than sitting in front of my computer. I have a huge walk-in closet that's almost like a room, which was perfect for doing it. So I would set up my computer in there, and I had my microphone, and I bought a music stand to put my Kindle on to read from, and all the clothes that were hanging, were a buffer for the sound. So it's a perfect room. I have the perfect setup. I just don't have the perfect voice.
Okay. And so do you listen to audiobooks
I
or
do not.
you do
I am
not?
a
Okay.
total reader. First of all, I'm not in the car long enough to 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 listen to anything. When I exercise, I like to listen to music if I'm walking outside. I mean, I probably could listen to an audiobook then, but I'm just not that into listening. I like to read. I have 3 Kindles for different reasons. So one is a Kindle Fire, and I love that it's in color, and I could look at the book covers, and I could also go onto the internet from there. But I bought a Kindle White or paper white that I could read outside because I couldn't read the Kindle Fire outside. And I still have my very first Kindle that um, it looks like a page is missing off the top, like somebody ripped a page off. So it's kind of broken, but I could still use it.
Then what was the inspiration, I guess, to choose to try your hand at audiobooks?
At audio. I think I had hired a person to do an audio of Sworn to Forget, the first of the Sworn Sisters books. And it's very expensive to hire somebody to do it, even though part of it is like sharing royalties from it, but there's still an upfront cost. And I thought, I don't know whether people are buying, whether people are going to buy this or not. It's a lot of money to put out if I were to have all my books done by someone else. So that's why I started learning the process, but I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. I'm just not an actress, I guess.
Uh, um, as a person who reads a lot of audiobooks, and I do call it reading, because there's a debate. I have a friend. The They really are actors and actresses, and I mean, even professional actors and actresses that we see in movies and TV don't always do as good a job as I think like Broadway and theater actors, because they tend to be able to do the different voices. So I understand what you're saying of how hard it is. Children, men, if you're a woman, or women if you're a man, and different accents and stuff. So it is a talent, I guess. I
It,
guess.
it sure is, and it just kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I haven't been back to it, but I would like to try it again. I mean, I have all the stuff. I should.
They're very popular. There's been a huge uptick in. Oh my, there's a lot of people entering. This is wonderful. Welcome everyone. We're chatting with with Maria Imbalzano, about her career as a writer, but also about Red Velvet Crinkles and Christmas Sprinkles. So thank you all for coming. Um, Anyone have any questions? You can write it in the chat, and I will ask Maria for you. We actually made it to like my particular interest question about the fun one about the audiobooks. But the other question that I always, and we did cover a little bit of the pantser plotter and that you are a plotter. Is it hard when you have it so well plotted that to infuse a lot of the like to make any changes because of inspiration strikes, or to actually I've done a little bit of writing, and I'm definitely a pantser. So for me it's like, how do you get the creative aspect if it's so well plotted? Like how do you infuse that?
So when I'm writing and sort of following my blueprint, as I call it, it's if my characters go off in a different on a different track, then we go off. That's fine. It's they're kind of writing the story with me. And that makes it a lot of fun. And then if I could wander back, to my blueprint or in the next scene or whatever. So it's not like I'm wedded to it. It's just that I need it to get started. I need to do all that work ahead of time before I could sit down and write the book. And if it veers off in some way, that's fine. It's not a problem.
And what if it's for something like the Sworn Sisters, that you kind of have certain things that happen in each book? And if they may not necessarily build on each other, but it does, the certain characters, if you've plotted things happening, especially in those first two where they were happening simultaneously, was it difficult? I guess, I mean, you did mention that it was very difficult to keep the sequence, but was it difficult to not go off, especially in the second
Yeah.
book?
Yeah, no, because again, each book is each sworn sister's own story. And really what I needed to keep throughout the series was their personalities, their jobs, their careers, where they lived, who their family was, that sort of their backstories.
Okay.
More than the storyline. So
Okay.
the stories can go off any one of them. They don't have to stay within my blueprint, and it really won't affect the other books because it's each woman's story, and they're just sort of secondary characters in the story.
Okay. And I have some questions from the participants. Do you give yourself a deadline from when you want the plotting done?
No, but I've gotten a lot faster. So generally, when I'll plot, I used to plot before New Jersey Romance Writers has that writing month in February, which I love to participate in. It's writing 30,000 words in a month. So I would definitely plot it if I knew that I was going to be writing a new book around then. I would plot it before then so that on February 1st I could just start with my writing. And once I have it all plotted out and blueprinted, it's very easy to write. But one of the things that I will do if I'm going on vacation and I don't want to be writing, I always start with a notebook, and that's where I plot a new book out with a notebook. If I'm on a beach vacation or some sort of relaxing vacation, which hasn't been happening over the past year and a half, but I will bring a notebook and start plotting a book on vacation, which is a lot of fun, just sitting there doing that.
Absolutely. Another question is, now that you've done the Sworn Sisters series, do you see yourself writing another series?
It appears that series are popular, but so I don't know. I haven't thought about my next move because I still have the Wilder West book that's coming out soon, and then the fourth of the Sworn Sisters. So I always write my ideas down in a different notebook. None of them are a series right now, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll let you know.
Okay. Interesting. Do you use a specific set of character questions at the beginning of your writing? If not,
No.
how do you handle character development? Okay.
So yeah, I don't use questions. I have them all, and being the crazy organized person that I am, I print out all of those things either from seminars or when I go online, and I have them all in white file folders alphabetically in a drawer, but I never pull them out. So I should really get rid of all those folders. But so what I do when I first started the book is I come up with the hero and the heroine and try to figure out what will keep them in conflict. Is it their job, like the outward conflict, the external conflict? Is it their job, like in Unchained Memories? She was a medical malpractice lawyer and he was an ER doctor. They have philosophical differences over medical malpractice. So that was something that I developed early on to keep them in conflict throughout the story. So that's what I'll try to do with my characters in the beginning. Just try to figure out what is their career. I do the whole goal, motivation, and conflict that Deb Dixon talks about in her book for every character. Their internal goal, motivation, and conflict, and external goal, motivation, and conflict. I write that all down and sort of build up their backstories that way. But I don't go through a list of questions about who they are. I just write it down as I come up with it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I thank you, Maria. I thank you for joining us today, and look forward to the fourth in the Sworn Sisters series. It's been great chatting. We haven't chatted about the holidays, even though there's a holiday in about.
Yeah, I think everybody's out shopping. I know I would be. But I certainly appreciate it, Janette. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to Anna and Victoria and Kimberly and Lena and Rose and Kathy for joining in. I really appreciate it.